Hello YouTube. This video is going to be about treasures, buried treasures, lost treasures, and adventures that go back hundreds of years. And it's for those who are interested in such things and want to hear more about Central Asia. So it's not going to be a short story, and I hope you like it, because I like stories about treasures, especially those in Eurasia. And this one has to do with the lake Issyk-Kul. Kyrgyzstan is a mountainous country, and it's nestled between the Uzbek deserts, the Kazakh steppe, Tajikistan, and the outback of western China. The majestic Tian Shan and Pamir mountain ranges stretch across this country. Lake Issyk-Kul, a turquoise-colored closed drainage basin, is located at an altitude of 1,600 meters and occupies the central part of the valley, surrounded by the snow-capped Kungi Alatu and the Tersky Alatu mountain ranges. This vast lake lies in the northeastern Kyrgyzstan, near the borders with China and Kazakhstan. Issyk-Kul is one of the less than 20 ancient lakes on Earth and is estimated to be approximately 25 million years old. It is the world's second largest highland lake, after Lake Titicaca bordering Peru and Bolivia. It's 182 kilometers long and up to 60 kilometers wide, with a maximum depth of 668 meters. The lake greatly affects the climate of the area. It doesn't freeze in winter. Its waters are surprisingly warm and exceptionally transparent, although they are getting polluted, to be honest. This pearl of Central Asia, also known as the Atlantis of Central Asia, conceals numerous mysteries. Associated with this lake are Neanderthal camps, ancient burial mounds, clusters of cave rock drawings, mysterious dolls made from stones, and the ruins of strange settlements, towns, and graves hidden beneath the lake's warm waters. Some of this dating back to the first millennium AD. There are more than 100,000 stone inscriptions or petroglyphs on the shores of Lake Issyk-Kul, dating back to Neolithic period. Different nomadic tribes that had dwelt in the area left artifacts from their now long vanished cultures. There are many legends of treasures buried at the bottom of the lake. Historians are of the opinion that there may be over 200 large and small treasures buried in the lake. Fragments of ceramics with Christian symbols have been discovered, as was a piece of a ceramic jug bearing the Star of David. There are old Arab legends about a lost city built by Persian captives of Alexander the Great, and rumors about the treasures of the anti-communist military forces of Russia. Many other stories abound, many stories. In the 19th century, archaeologists discussed the remnants of an ancient city at the bottom of Lake Issyk-Kul, which contained an Armenian monastery. A Catalan map was found dating back to 1375 AD, which shows Issyk-Kul and a structure with a cross over it on the northern shore, marking the location of the Armenian monastery, allegedly containing remains of Saint Matthew. Archaeologists of Central Asia are aware of more than a dozen sunken ancient and medieval settlements on the bottom of the lake. For instance, the town of Chigu, capital of the once powerful state of the Usuns. They had discovered ceramics, earthen pottery, bronze and copper artifacts, coins and items from the Mongol period. And that's important. The Mongols, they had their own name for Lake Issyk-Kul. They called it Femur Unor. Now I want to talk about the Mongol invasion of Kyrgyzstan. You'll see where it all leads to. Now, the Great Silk Road functioned as an extremely important trade route from China to the capital of the Roman Empire in the 2nd century BC. The road was about 7,000 kilometers long. Before the discovery of the sea route to India, the Silk Road was the most important connection between the Orient and the West. The most valuable commodity imported from China was silk. That's why the entire transcontinental trade route was named the Silk Road. But many other commodities were also traded: gold, ivory, exotic animals, plants, iron, fur, ceramics, jade, bronze objects, lacquer, precious stones, and glass. Now, religion too was a precious commodity on the Great Silk Road. Buddhism came to China from India along the northern branch of the trade road. Scattered throughout the mountains and valley of Kyrgyzstan are numerous ruins of Zoroastrian, Buddhist, and Nestorian Christian monuments. The geographic location of Kyrgyzstan assured its significance on the Great Silk Road. From the very beginning, 3 branches of the Silk Road ran through the area. There had been settlements and caravanserai on the shores of Issyk-Kul along the Silk Road from the 7th century BC. There are still ruins of 3 towns in this region: Navikat, Suyab, and Balasagun. The towns prospered and trade thrived. That is until the Mongol warriors under Genghis Khan invaded and devastated the territory that comprises modern Kyrgyzstan. In 1218, Genghis Khan had sent his hound Jebe and a large military detachment to the Chui Valley in the northern Tian Shan region. Ugadai his son was a participant in the military operation. Their goal was to take the town of Balasagun. This town, established in the 9th century, was one of the capitals of the Karahanid Khaganate and the Karahitan Khaganate, or Kingdom of Central Asia. Now, the Mongols, they destroyed irrigation system. They laid waste to prosperous towns and turned farms to dust. The devastation inflicted on the territory was so harsh that the populations and cultures of Central Asia did not begin to recover until the Russian expansion there in the 19th century. But before their prosperous towns were annihilated, rich inhabitants were hiding their treasures either in the soil or in the bottom of the beautiful lake. Who knows what fate befell those who hid away their treasures away from those merciless Mongol invaders. Now, local Christians, together with monks of the abbey in Suyab near Balasagun, also knew quite well that the enemy was coming their way. So they fled, taking the treasure with them. They organized a convoy of 200 camels loaded with gold and jewels, and traveled quickly along the north shore of Issyk-Kul towards Kashgar. Kashgar is located about 1,300 meters above the sea level in a cul-de-sac formed by Tian Shan, Pamir, and Kunlun ranges in what is now China's Xinjiang province, close to the borders with Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. It was a major Silk Road town and a crossroads for invading armies. Now, the Christians, they never reached Kashgar because another Mongol military unit was approaching from Santash mountain path over the watershed between the Ili and Issyk-Kul basins. The trapped Christians decided to hide their treasure. They buried the part of it in an Armenian Christian abbey in the area. They hid another part of the treasure in the coastal waters. They took the remaining treasure to a cave in the mountains. There was a river that ran into this cave, and the Christians were able to divert its waters for a while. They hid the treasure in the cave, probably burying it in the ground, and placed stone slabs over the hiding place. They marked one slab with a cross and then covered everything with soil. The river was again allowed to run into the cave, and the treasure was saved or lost, depending on one's point of view. I want to tell you now about the Templar Knights and the Nestorians. When the Emperor Constantine made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire in the middle of the 4th century AD, he suppressed Hellenistic teachings and alchemy, among other things, regarding them as pagan. Now, the Nestorian Christians, a dissident sect, smuggled their forbidden manuscripts out of Syria to Persia in 400 AD. The sect followers spread out and founded colonies in the cities among the Silk Road through Central Asia. Nestorian Christianity flourished in China for several hundred years. Legend has it that the Nestorian Christians reached the lake and founded a monastery on the northern shore of Issyk-Kul. The cemeteries discovered in the area cover the period from the mid-13th to the mid-14th centuries. Allegedly, the Nestorians aided Knights Templar in building a castle somewhere on an island in Lake Issyk-Kul. Here, supposedly, is the place to which the Templars brought their fabulous treasure. I will not explore the countless myths and legends about the order, but I suggest it would be of great interest to historians to find out what the fearsome Mongol commander knew about the Templars. Apparently they met on the Polish battlefield of Liegnitz in 1241, but the Knights Templar were no match for the Mongol armies. Perhaps one of the captured knights knew too much about the treasure hidden by his order in Issyk-Kul and revealed the information under torture. Who knows? The search for treasure has not stopped since the Mongols arrived on the shores of Lake Issyk-Kul. But what sort of treasures were the Mongols looking for? None other than the warrior Sabadai Bagatur hunted for treasures in the waters, including supposedly the hidden riches of the Order of the Knights Templar. Allegedly, on his return east in 1242. Now, the defeated and humiliated China was ordered to provide skilled divers for Sabadai project. But it's also time to talk about the treasures of Genghis Khan. In 1227, Genghis Khan was severely injured when he fell from a horse during a hunt, and he died shortly afterwards. It has been largely accepted by historians that Genghis Khan died while he was fighting in Shishia, a territory bordering on present-day autonomous Chinese regions of Ningxia and Inner Mongolia. The truth surrounding the death and subsequent burial of Genghis Khan is still shrouded in mystery. Some legends have it that he was buried in the Ordos Plateau in Inner Mongolia, region of China, and that a shrine was built there. There are conflicting accounts as to why the universal ruler chose the area. Some state that he selected it because of its beauty. There were to be no tombs for Mongol noblemen after their death, but imperial temples were built so as to allow commemoration of royal ancestors. The exact gravesite of Temujin is one of archaeologists' lasting mysteries. To conceal the actual gravesite, 800 soldiers were said to have massacred everyone of the 2,000 people who attended this funeral. In turn, the 800 soldiers were killed to ensure that Genghis Khan's rest was undisturbed. One legend has it that thousands of horses were raised over Genghis Khan's grave to erase any trace of it and the treasure that was buried within. As a rule, when any Mongolian nobleman died, his burial immediately became a taboo subject, but not to the extent of Genghis Khan's. There were reports in early 2000s that American scientists had found a possible Temujin gravesite in Mongolia, but they could not proceed because of problems with the Mongolian authorities. Some Mongol researchers also point to the Altai Mountains as the burial place of Genghis Khan, while others suggest that some of his belongings were buried in Ordos as a cover. China has had a very special relationship with the legacy of the universal ruler. Basically, most rulers of China, including the Ming and Qing dynasties, the Kuomintang Republican regime, and the communists, they gave official recognition and support to the founder of the Mongol Empire. All this respect even after the collapse of the Kublai Khan, established Yuan dynasty of China. The Red Guards of the Cultural Revolution had no such respect and destroyed some important artifacts from Genghis Khan's times. Even today, one can learn much from a visit to the Genghis Khan mausoleum near Dongsheng, China. This mausoleum was built in 1954-56 and is the biggest attraction in that part of Inner Mongolia. There are experts in China who discount Mongolia as the burial place of the ruler of the universe. One skeptic is Luo Xinyu. He is a professor at the Institute of Minorities at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in Beijing. According to him, a Mongolian legend suggests that Genghis Khan was buried secretly in a mountainous region. Which mountainous region, should we ask? Now, scientists in Kyrgyzstan believe that the treasures and the body of the universal ruler were actually hidden at the bottom of Lake Issyk-Kul. There are old Kyrgyz legends about how Genghis Khan's son Ugedei had prepared a coffin made of a very hard, durable material. His father's body, along with the treasures of gold and jewels, was put in the coffin and buried on the bottom of the lake. But there were more Mongols' treasures to hide, and that is precisely what Ugedei did. He placed jewels in a mountain cave that was later flooded. I found interesting details about the Soviet treasure hunt in the area in the early 1950s. There were reports that the KGB and the Geological Council of the Kyrgyz Soviet Socialist Republic were engaged in the search for Genghis Khan treasures in 1952. An obscure but very informative Kyrgyz ecological website contained information about this search for the universal ruler's treasures, but this site doesn't exist anymore. The search was based on a map that the Red Chinese gave to their Soviet allies at the time. Chup village was allegedly the location of the hidden treasure. Allegedly, the gold and silver were hidden under a huge rock. However, it is unclear whether the treasure that the Soviets were trying to find was that of the Nestorian Christians. Most likely because the people who hid it were described as being chased by nomads. Or these were the treasures of the Mongols. The map was very poor and nothing was discovered, probably because local inhabitants secretly and skillfully sabotaged the work. The area was surrounded by barbed wire and guards were placed to protect the treasure that the Soviets intended to find regardless of obstacles. The biggest obstacles, however, was Stalin's death in 1953 and the turmoil that followed. In 1973, a popular Soviet newspaper, Trud, published an article about treasures hidden throughout the Soviet Union. The newspaper mentioned Chup as the location where Genghis Khan's treasure was buried. The information was based on Soviet secret police files from the 1930s. And in August of 1975, the Soviet newspaper Pravda ran an article titled "Return to the Secret," stating that the Ministry of Internal Affairs was searching for Genghis Khan's treasures in Lake Issyk-Kul. One of the sources for this information was the local Russian language website, but who knows if it's still in existence. Of course, I'm talking about 1990s that we published the story. Some hushed-up activities conducted by Kyrgyz geologists had taken place in 1976 and 1977. The geologists researched ancient legends and looked for the treasure in the area of Kurmentau Canyon. There were once gold and silver mines there, but the geologists were looking for treasure and apparently found some proof, but needed input from archaeologists. Well, there were also freelancers, especially after the fall of the USSR, because the new civic code of the Kyrgyz Republic states that anyone who finds the treasure has the right to a reward about 50% of the discovered treasure's value. I'm not sure if they haven't changed the code, so my information may be dated. Now, whatever one's opinion of the Mongol conquest may be, I think we can all agree that looting or disturbing ancient sacred graves is not the answer to finding out the truth about the past. Modern Mongol people will not look kindly on anyone who disturbs the burial ground of their ancient leader. In their tradition, no one is allowed to lay hands on the bones of their ancestors, and they must respect the will of the Genghis Khan. He did not want any sign of his grave to be left after his death, lest his everlasting peace be disturbed. There is a Mongol legend that the universal ruler would be reborn after 800 years from the day of his death. And to be practical, local people around Issyk-Kul very well understand that there are treasure hunters and they know how to defend themselves, and I wouldn't mess with them. It's interesting to read about treasures, but most of them stay buried and do not come up. Sometimes they're found, but we know very little about it. Now, I like stories about treasures because I grew up in Kiev, and in the hills surrounding the area where I live, the ancient part of Kiev, those hills were full of historical artifacts after so many invasions and wars. And children sometimes found out things when they were playing in the hills. And you could find daggers, you could find swords, and so forth. Our planet is full of interesting stories about treasures, and I'll try to bring you more about you from Eurasia. But once again, I caution you, be careful, because local treasures are always protected by the local people and security services in such countries. If you like my research, I ask that you please support me. There are links in my video description, and I'll try to bring you many more interesting stories. Thank you.